Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Grogan, and this is the part one for the for lesson 13, other forms of input. What we're going to be doing, this will be a two-part video. All right. The first part is going to cover sections 4 and 5. All right. Like I said on the directions, make sure that you follow along with the with this video, so that way you'll be able to figure out how to do this. There is a lot of new code in this particular section, all right, and it's really going to be the last section that we're going to be working on with JavaScript. We're going to do after we finish this lesson, we're going to I'm going to show you have you do one or two assignments where you will be actually creating something using the JavaScript program or the JavaScript game lab. All right. There is a lot of new code on this section. We will go through some of it in this video, in particular the if-else statement and the sprite visible. There is a lot of other code that is also introduced here, where the key went down, key went up, mouse did move, mouse down, mouse went down, mouse went up. We will cover that in the next part. But the sprite visible, the two that I'm really going to focus on in this part is the if-else statement and the sprite visible. The if-else statement, I did introduce that when we did lesson 12, all right? And sprite visible was it is a code that allows your variable to disappear if you want it to, all right? And I will show you how that works in just a few minutes, all right? Yeah, I have the window open at my house right now, so you might hear motorcycles going by. I do apologize for that. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with section 4, okay? And what I want you to do is just make sure that you follow along with me on this video. All right, section 4, all right, is involving when to provide the else, which is involving the if-else statement. All right. When I run this program, you're going to see a swarm of bees, all right, that are buzzing around a flower, all right. Now, when you look at the directions here, you're going to see that the bees, when they fly around the flower, they're obviously visible, but when they move over to the right-hand side, they disappear. So what we're going to do is that we're going to put in code that will make these bees disappear when they go to the right-hand side of this program. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an if-else statement after the code that updates the position of the bees. And then in the input of the if statement, we're going to use a Boolean to check the X position of the mouse, to check if the X position of the mouse is on the other side of the screen with the flower. And then we're going to set a visible property of each bee inside both the if and else statements appropriately to make the bees only show up near the flower. All right. So that's a lot to take in there. So what I'm going to do is just use this video to follow along with me, and I'll show you how this will work. All right. When you look at the workspace, you will see a variable for flower, which is right here. All right. And also 3 more variables for the bees. There's 3 of them here, and they're all buzzing around. Okay. Notice that they all 3 bees have a random number code on them that goes from 0 to 400. All right. And if you go on the animation tab here, all right, you have it right there. Okay, you have the flower and you have the bee. Okay, and the world frame rate is set at 20. Okay, and so that the bees will move around at a fast rate. All right, so we have under the function draw, we have b, b1x, b1y, b2x, b2y, b3x, b3y. All right, and this basically allows it so that way we can, the bees will buzz around the the arrow of the mouse there. Okay. That's what they do with the minus the random number codes that are here. All right. So what we're going to do, okay, underneath the B3Y is that we are going to add an if statement on there. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to Toolbox Control, and you will you'll notice that if you go to Toolbox Control, you're going to see 2 codes there, one for an if statement and one if-else statement, okay? You could use either one, all right? If I were to choose the if statement, I'm going to put this right here. Okay, I can turn this, if you recall back when we were on lesson 12, you can turn this into an if else statement by clicking on the plus arrow here. Okay, all right, and if I wanted to make it back into just a regular if statement, I could just click on the minus right there. But we want this to be an if else statement. So we want to have code that will run if the condition is true, but with the if else statement, it allows us to run code if the conditional is false. All right. Okay. So to do this, what we're going to do is that we have to set a conditional here. All right. And what we're going to do I'm going to click on show grid here. All right. And you'll notice that when the flower is on the left-hand side of this program, okay? And notice that on the X, if you look at the X coordinate, if you click on the show grid, you'll notice that the X coordinate, really the flower is between X0 and X200 is where you will find the flower image. If I go over here, you'll notice that, when I'm at like an X300 or X250, okay, there's no flower image there, all right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to go, we're going to first select Toolbox Math, and we are going to use the less than operator, okay? So we're going to select this one. We're going to put it right inside the conditional, okay? So then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Toolbox World, all right? And we are going to select the World Mouse X, okay? And World Mouse X, whoops. All right, it's a universal code. All right, basically meaning, I'll explain what that means in one moment. All right, so World Mouse X, all right, less than 200. All right, so I'm going to put 200 right here. Okay, so this applies to anything to the left of 200. Okay, so if World Mouse X is less than 200, it really applies to everything here. Okay, all right, everything that's on the left-hand side of this program. Okay, so what we have to do, all right, now our overall objective, okay, is that we want to use a visible property of each B inside both the if and else statements appropriately to make the B's only show up near the flower. Okay, so what we have to do, all right, so if this statement is correct, we have to put code in here to indicate what will happen if it's true. All right, and what we want it to happen is that these bees will be visible whenever they're around the flower. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Toolbox Sprites, okay, and we are going to use the Sprite Visible key or the Sprite Visible code. All right, and we're going to put 3 of these here. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. All right. So, and the reason why we're using 3 of them is we're going to create a visible code for each B. You'll notice there's 3 of them, B1, B2, and B3. So what I'm going to do for this one, I'm going to put B1, name this one B2. Now remember, whenever you're using when you're naming a variable, okay, it's okay to have numbers in them, all right? They just can't start with a number, all right? Okay, so if I were to make it 1B or 2B, that wouldn't work, all right? But B1, that works, all right? And so what we're going to do over here after the equal sign for each one, we're going to type in true, okay? And again, keep in mind that an if statement is basically like asking a true-false question. True and true. Okay. All right. So we have if World Mouse X is less than 200, the B will show up. Okay. That's basically what we did here. Now, for else, that's the code that runs if this conditional set up here is not true. Okay. So if this was false, we need to have code for the else statement. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the exact same thing that we did here. The only difference is that over here, instead of true, it's going to be false. So I'm going to do that right now. Put the visible. I'll put another visible code and another visible code. All right. So we have B1, one for B2, and one for B3. Okay. Now, and as I said, the difference that we're doing here is that we're going to type in false for this. So we have false, false, and false. Like that. Okay. That's how that'll work. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to reset this program and we're going to run it. We'll see what happens. Okay. So I start off, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So that way you can kind of see what I'm doing here. So we have the bee over here. On the left-hand side, we have the bee that shows up, the swarm of bees. They're right around the flower. So, bees they like flowers. All right. But when I move the bees away from the flower, they disappeared. Where'd they go? They disappeared. But now, if I move it back towards this arrow here, once it goes back towards the flower, voila, they come back. All right. The reason why that happens, okay, all right, is that I set up the code here that says if world mouse X, which is world mouse X, it's by saying world mouse X is less than 200, it means that any time this arrow here is to the left of X 200, all right, then that means that this B1, B2, and B3 will be visible, okay? If world mouse X is greater than 200, then this else statement applies, okay? And it says B1 visible, false, okay? So that means once I get to the right of X 200, okay? All right, if I look at it right now, so I move this over slowly to the right. Once the X, if you look down here, okay, once X goes once X goes above 200, it disappears. Okay, so right now I'm set at X202. The bees have disappeared. Okay, but if I move it ever so slightly like that, to like X197, the bees come up. All right, now I have them up here. However, if I put them down here, the bees will still show up. Okay, so just as a quick aside, all right, let's do this real quick. If I were to change this from world mouse X, if I got rid of it and I put in world mouse Y, and if I set it is if world mouse Y is less than 200, okay, the bees will show up here, but not down here, okay, like that. All right, so you notice that I set it at, once Y is less than 200, the bees show up, but what if I put it down here, if you notice that right now it's at Y266, the bees have disappeared. All right, so I'm just going to put this back, but I'm just showing this to you just so you have an idea how that works. Okay, so I'm going to put the world mouse X back up there, and it'll look like that. Okay, so that's essentially how the visible code works. All right, it allows your sprite to disappear if you want it to. Okay, and that's and this just shows you. This is a very good example of actually how that works. All right. So once you have all this down for section 4, you're done with that section. You could move right on to section 5. All right. Section 5, okay, you might be familiar with. Oops, let me go right over here. This one involves the gears, which we've done in lessons before. We did this in a prior lesson. Okay. But what we're going to do is that we're going to, the gears are back. They spin one direction when you press the space bar, but now you want them to spin the other direction when the space bar isn't pressed. So what we're going to do is that we're going to make the gears spin opposite of the direction that they do when the space bar is pressed. All right. So now, and just to show you, you have on the workspace here, we have the blue gear, green gear, and red gear. Okay. Now, inside this function draw, okay, we have if key down is space. If I click on the space bar, it moves. Okay. The key down code we worked on in lesson 12. Okay. In order for this to work like this, you have to hold down on the when you have a key down code, you have to hold down on the key in order for it to work. When you let go of in this case, when you let go of the space bar, it doesn't move. Okay. So what we're going to do, okay, right now you'll notice that the blue gear rotation is set at -1. The green gear rotation is set at +1, and the red gear rotation is set at +1. So what we're going to do, all right, is that we need to make the gears spin opposite of the direction that they do when the space bar is pressed. So what we need to do is, under the workspace, where you see the if statement, as I told you before, that little plus arrow, this plus button right here, it's on the bottom right-hand corner of the code. You click on it, it turns into the else portion of it comes up. All right. And what we're going to do on this part, okay, is that we're going to we're going to go to Toolbox Sprites, and we're going to use the sprite rotation codes. We're going to put 3 of them in, one for each gear, like this, and this. Okay. And after the equal sign for each one, we're going to do we're going to put these conditionals in here, okay? But there's going to be one change, okay? For the first one, and we're going to go to Toolbox Math. We're going to go, you'll notice that for the first one, it says blue gear rotation -1, all right? So what we're going to do for the else statement is that we're going to put in a plus symbol here, so like this, okay? And then for this right here, we're going to go to Toolbox Sprites, and we're going to put a sprite rotation here, okay? All right, and we're just going to put a 1 right here, all right? And we're going to get rid of the word sprite for here and here, and we're going to name this blue gear, just like it says up there, okay? Like this. Okay, all right, so now we have, and what you're going to do for the other two is you're going to look at the code that's up here, and for the conditionals, you're going to use the opposite of what's up here, okay? So for this one, I'm going to put green gear, all right? And then we're going to go to Toolbox Math, and we're going to select this. You'll notice here it has a +1 for the right here, so we're going to use a -1, all right? And we're going to go to Toolbox Sprites, sprite rotation. We'll name that green gear. And I'm going to put that as a -1. And then for the last one, we have a red gear. All right. And then I'm going to go to Toolbox Math, and I'm going to select a -1. That's the -1 here. And because it's a +1 up here. All right. And then I'm going to go to Toolbox Sprites, sprite rotation, red gear. All right. So notice that for the else statement, okay, the code that if this is false, okay, this will go in the opposite direction of what's up here, okay? So notice that blue gear rotation -1. For the else statement, it's blue gear rotation +1. Up here, green gear rotation +1. Down here for the else statement, it's -1. Red gear up here, it's +1. Red gear rotation down here is -1, okay? Reset. Run, okay? Right now it's moving, okay? But when I hit the space bar, it goes in the other direction, like that, okay? You'll notice that if you coded this correctly, you'll notice that when you hit the space bar, it goes into a different direction, all right? So that's how that works, all right? And there will be a part 2 for lesson 13, all right, that I will give to you the next time that we have class. All right. If you have any questions on it, feel free to ask. Just email. Okay. Thank you very much.